thing that you do continually. Right, the idea of when we build this is that it's going to look exactly the same afterwards. So we're not going to have loose wires, we're not going to have things showing underneath. You'll be able to store it away and leave it exactly the same as it was before. The only difference is it will be, the flipper's going to be electrified, so you'll be able to drive on and drive off of the... Okay, so this is preparing the chips. Chips come basically with 5 legs either side, all pointing downwards. On top of the device is a line that running across the top there, which you probably won't be able to see in this video, but that signifies the top and identifies where pin 1 is. So the first thing that we need to do with the chip is to get the legs in the right order, because we have to get the chip down to low profile to fit underneath the cover. So stage 1 is I take the line and I put the line at the top. So I'm holding it so that the line's at the top. Then I flick one of the top 2 pins upwards. We have to do 2 of these, and they're handed, mirror image, so one for each side. So it doesn't matter which pin you do to start with, but the second one that you're going to do, you'll do the opposite one. Once you've put 1 pin upwards, the next 3 pins down on that side, you bend over a full 180 degrees, so it goes all the way around, flat up against the side of the body. Okay, this is a part of the chip that we're not going to use. We don't need these legs, we could cut them off, but it's easy enough just to bend them out of the way. So now they've sort of bent out of the way. The last pin we bend outwards and upwards, so it goes at 45 degrees. It's going to go flat but then bend up at 45 degrees. Okay, so that's that side. Now we move on to the other side. We pick the 3 central pins and we move them out 90 degrees. Okay, so they're sticking out sideways. We're going to move them just slightly down because we don't have very much room for soldering underneath the cover, so we've got only 6mm. This chip height measures in at 5mm. The remaining 2 pins now we're going to bend in towards the body and very, very slightly up, not like the 45 degrees we did on the other side, but not quite straight. Okay, so that's the end result, and now you have to do a mirror image, and here's one that I did earlier. Okay, so that makes 2, and that's step 1. Now we're going to do a solder link across the 2 bottom pins, but before we can do that we have to tin each of the pins, and by tinning I mean what we do is we take a soldering iron. Okay, we take a soldering iron, we take a bit of solder, and we go into a pin and just melt a little bit of solder on the top of it. So we're not joining anything. So in fact we need to tin all of the legs with the exception of those 3 that we bent through 180 degrees, which are not going to be used. Okay, all the other pins get used. So all the other pins have to be tinned. You have to do that on both of them. When you've tinned it, you need to solder a piece of wire. It's very fine wire, we're only dealing with signal levels, across the bottom 2 pins. So I'm just going to do that now. So we'll join a piece of wire across there. Let's join to the first pin, and then we'll join it to the second pin right here, right now. And then I'll just snip the rest of the wire away. And that's basically that module ready to go. That one is now ready to rock and roll. Okay. Right, we need to ahead of time prepare some wires. I'm using speaker wire and I'm using power wires from the original power base, because I've got a lot of cut bits left from doing SH conversions and things like that. We also need signal wires, and the signal wires I'm using have come from the cable that I use for making up the PB Pro, PIP Pro and C7042 cables. Right. Next we need to prepare the track. So first of all, turn the track over. I've been doing them with the sensors at this end. It's just nice to have some central area. So in the central area there's 5 screws, and those 5 screws we're going to remove, and that will give us access to that area. So I'll do that right now. What we're going to do as the first thing though is we're going to cut the wires off. We're going to cut them off exactly on the end of where the sheath is. So I'm going in like this, one cut, and all 6 wires are gone. Okay, so we've done that, and now temporarily I'm going to just pull the cable out like that, form a loop and put it back, so at the end of the day it's just slightly short and it's out of the way, so for the next items I'm going to do. Okay, so let's the item that I won't show you is there are 6 wires that we've cut off. Right, I'm going to strip the ends of those and I'm going to tin them, okay, as part of the preparation. But what I will show you now is we need to prepare for some power takeoff points, and the power takeoff points that I'm going for are right next to the most forward part of the link wires that are there. So that one, I'm going to put an equivalent one here. I've got to say, I'm old school, so I always scrape the metal. I've got to say these brand new ones solder to pretty easily anyway, but yours might not. So one on this side and one on the other side. We're just doing the preparation at the moment because we will be soldering a wire to there. But as preparation, we take a soldering iron. In this case, it's a slightly bigger one. I like to get a bit of heat to get into the track, and just put a big blob of solder down on that one, and another big blob of solder down on that one. So there's only one other thing apart from tinning those wires, which I'm not going to show you directly now, which is that I'm going to put some double-sided sellotape or scotch tape in this area here, directly behind the 2 solenoids. There's a plastic mount point, right? And the reason for this is that we're going to use that to just hold the chips in place. So take a pair of scissors. This is at 34mm long and approximately 10mm wide. And that just goes just down in there. Doesn't have to be pushed down too much because that will be pushed down when we do the when we fit the chips. Okay. One very last thing, your craft knife, scalpel, we need to cut a hole for the wire to come out from the pivot point. So I'm just cutting in a V notch into the black surround around the pivot point. and flick out a bit of material. He says as this one gets particularly difficult for some reason, and do the same on the opposite side. Okay, wires are now tinned. The only other thing to do is sometimes there's quite a lot of glue around around these boards where the wires go. You might need to ease the wires a bit because sometimes they're a bit trapped. Next stage is to get back to the wire that we tucked out of the way, and we need to make enough length now to be able to solder to. So I'm going to cut this back by about 6 millimeters. So just set that 6 millimeters is about there. So we're now ready for assembly. So we'll start to get all the parts together and start looking at bonding. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to solder the wire extensions to the cable. So blue wire, soldering iron, they're both pre-tinned. What I've got to do is just introduce them, a little bit of heat, and hey presto. So that's nice and joined, should be able to see that. So the next stage is to do the rest of them and then slip a piece of heat shrink sleeving over the top of it. I've got lots of different colours, but I'm only using red just for the hell of it. So then I'd recommend that you do all the wires first, and then come in with the hot gun. So we do that, a little bit of heat around the outside. That's it. You can see it shrunk down, and that's not going anywhere now, so that now won't be able to short, so that's fine. So that is the blue wire now extended, right? So I'll do the rest of them and then we'll get on to the next stage. So we've got the two chips ready, and the chips are going on basically with the legs that we folded flat hard up against the housing that holds the solenoids in place, right? The wire link bit is towards the centre, okay, and they're out as far as they can go, right, but hard up against the solenoid. So let's just get that right, and it feels just good. Can make all the difference to something being difficult or easy to do. So that's that soldered onto the chip, nicely done, and we'll do the yellow one. So these are going over the top of the solenoid actuator rod. And that's that. So we should still have free movement, as you can tell. Just moving the bars along. Now we're going to bring our extended wires over the top of the solenoid and solder to the same pins as the wire colours that were already joined. I'll say that again. We're going to bring the wires right over the top of the solenoid, so over the top of the yellow solenoids, that's where they're going to sit, and we're going to join them to the same colour wires that have been connected from the boards. So, and just solder that in. The great thing about everything being tinned is it can take just a fraction of a second to do these. Alright, now I'm going to do the black one because the wires are coming over the top of that, so we'll try and bring that one in. So That's now linked, a little tug just to make sure. And the yellow, I'm putting a small kink in this because it's actually possibly a little bit too long. It's better if it's got a little bit of a kink in it. So that's one side done, and the other side similarly. Okay, so we've got good connections, and really at this end now we just need to tidy up. The cover's got a lip on it. You'll see if you look at the cover in detail that that it's got a lip on it along the edge. So you have to make sure that the wires that you've just been heat shrinking, etc., have got plenty of clearance for that. So set that into position, make the cable all the way down the line into position so it's optimized. Kink that one out slightly, and then we'll re-look at where the whole apparatus is. That all looks good. Okay, so we finished with the with all the signal wires now. We now start with the power wires. So we should have a long and a short black and a long and a short red. So go in with heavy duty iron again. Heavy duty iron's only at 25 watt, I think 25 maybe 30 watt compared to my fine one, and the fine one is actually is an 18 watt. Has a very fine tip on it, so it's just quite good for getting into small areas. So we're nearly there. We're very nearly there. That's now basically functioning in terms of the solenoidal switch. The only bit we're missing is the connection to the pivots. So let's get the pivot wires out. So there's two of those, and we need some tape as well. Right. So I'm just going to solder that directly on. There's nothing handed here. You know, either white one can go on either end. And we'll do the same with the other one, but there's no question that's a perfectly acceptable fit. I go in with the central screw first, just for the hell of it. Then I do the two either side of the pivots. So they're sort of like at the rear, if you like. 3 different ways of doing it. Seems to be not that easy. Okay, so we're good now. This is a system that's now in place. It all looks good. It's going to work. But what we can have is we can have this rail touching the side here. Right, hang on, not in vision. Let's get that right. The flipper can touch this rail here, and if for some reason the solenoid flips the other way and the flipper doesn't move, then you could end up basically creating a short. Right, so we really don't want to do that. So we want to insulate the flipper. Now I've tried 2-3 different things. For me, wrapping a piece of sellotape over the nose, as long as it's well on, is probably the most stable, if you like, or most robust way of doing it. the problem is that if you unless your sellotape is very shallow, if it catches at all on the bottom, it will stop the flipper from operating properly. So he says, if we zoom back out, then what we've got now is something that ostensibly looks like a standard XLC. I couldn't tell that that it's been done, which means that you can use it. You don't have to have it in a sort of like a permanent layout or anything like that where you can't move it, or you don't have to risk catching the wires or anything like that, or shorting out on anything. And that's it. That's the electrified flipper mod. Thank you very much. To flipper and not get stuck on them. Okay, so first thing to do is we only need to mess in one area, and that's in the